They say money can't buy happiness, but in the hallowed, ivy-covered halls of St. Jude's University, money bought something much more dangerous: impunity. I learned that lesson on a Tuesday, while I was scrubbing a floor. I was supposed to be walking across in a graduation gown. My name is Sloane Sterling. To the kids at St. Jude's, I wasn't a person. I was a statistical anomaly. I was the daughter of the man who emptied their trash cans, attending the most expensive school in the country on a scholarship that covered every penny provided. I kept my GPA at a perfect 4.0, and I did. I lived in the library. I solved equations on the windows until the glass was a blur of white ink. I was a week away from a $200,000 post-grad grant that would have changed my family's life forever. Then there was Alastair Finch. Alastair didn't have to solve equations. He just had to exist. His father's name was on the aerospace wing of the campus. He walked through life like he owned the air we breathed, mostly because he probably did. The night it happened, I was in the computer lab. Finishing my thesis on structural integrity, I saw Alastair through the glass. He was sweating, looking over his shoulder, typing furiously at a terminal he wasn't supposed to be near. I didn't think much of it then. I thought even golden boys get stressed before finals. But the next morning, my world ended. I was pulled out of my advanced physics seminar by 2 campus security officers. No explanation. No please, just a cold walk to the dean's office. The dean didn't even look at me. He just played a video. It showed my login, my IP address, and my digital signature selling the university's proprietary engine designs to a rival firm for $50,000. It was a digital frame job so perfect it was beautiful. I looked at Alastair, who was sitting in the corner of the office, playing the concerned witness. He had planted the trail. He had used my brilliant, poor girl reputation as the perfect cover for his own theft. "I didn't do this," I whispered. My voice felt like it was coming from underwater. "Check the security cameras. Check the timestamps." "We did, Sloane," the dean said, his voice dripping with disappointment. "The logs are ironclad. Your scholarship is revoked, effective immediately. You have 2 hours to clear your locker." I walked out into the courtyard. It was pouring. The kind of rain that feels like it's trying to wash you out of existence. Alastair followed me out. He didn't have an umbrella, but he didn't need one. The world seemed to stay dry just for him. "Alastair, why?" I asked. I wasn't even angry yet. I was just hollow. "You have everything. Why take the one thing I have?" He stepped close, smelling like expensive cologne and arrogance. He didn't look guilty. He looked bored. "It's simple, Sloane," he said, leaning against his $200,000 Italian sports car. "My father needed a win, and the school needed a scapegoat. I looked at your background, your bank account, and your future." He reached out and flicked a drop of rain off my shoulder like I was a piece of trash. "And honestly, you just aren't a good investment." He got in his car and drove away, splashing muddy water all over my only suit. I stood there shivering, watching his taillights fade. He thought he had closed the book on me. He thought I was just a liability he could write off. But Alastair forgot one thing about mathematicians. We know how to play the long game. And I was about to start calculating the interest on the debt he owed me. 10 years is a long time to hold your breath. While Alastair Finch was busy, making headlines in the Business Insider for his yacht parties and his failed Finch Orbit tourism launches, I was a ghost. I changed my name, buried my past, and started a small hedge fund with a desk, made of 2 sawn-off doors and a laptop that hummed like a lawnmower. I didn't spend a dime on luxury. I bought data. I bought debt. I bought the very air Alastair breathed, 1 cubic inch at a time. Now I don't sit at sawn-off doors. I sit in a penthouse office at the top of the Sterling Tower, 60 floors above the people who once thought I was invisible. My assistant, a man I pay more than the dean of St. Jude's ever dreamed of making, buzzed the intercom. "Ms. Sterling? Mr. Finch is here. He looks agitated." "Let him simmer for 10 minutes, Marcus," I said, leaning back in my obsidian chair. "Then bring him in." I watched the clock. 10 minutes is exactly how long it took for the campus security to toss my belongings into the mud 10 years ago. When the doors finally opened, Alastair didn't walk in. He stumbled. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. His bespoke suit was wrinkled, his tie was loose, and the smell of desperation coming off him was stronger than any cologne. He didn't see Sloane Sterling, the scholarship girl. He saw the Ice Queen of Wall Street, the only person on the planet with the liquidity to stop his empire from imploding. He didn't even wait for me to speak. "Mrs. Sterling," he gasped, throwing a thick leather folder onto my desk. "Thank you for seeing me. I'll be brief. Finch Aerospace is facing a temporary liquidity gap. 800 million. It's a sure thing, we just need a bridge loan for 90 days. I'm prepared to offer you 5% equity." I didn't touch the folder. I didn't even look at it. I just looked at him. 5%? I asked, my voice as cold as the rain in that courtyard. "For a company that's currently under investigation by the SEC for missing pension funds? You're bold, Alastair. I'll give you that." He froze. His eyes widened, searching my face. He was trying to place me. He knew the voice maybe, or the way I tilted my head, but his brain couldn't bridge the gap between a janitor's daughter and a woman who could buy his entire bloodline. Do I know you?" he stammered. I slowly reached into my desk drawer. I pulled out a small laminated card. It was cracked, the edges yellowed with age. I slid it across the obsidian. It was my St. Jude's ID. The photo showed a girl with tired eyes and a determined jaw. Sloane Sterling. Student ID 042. Alastair's face didn't just go pale. It went gray. He looked at the card, then back at me, then back at the card. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He actually stepped back, his hand catching the edge of a guest chair to keep from falling. "Sloane?" he whispered. The girl from the computer lab? "The charity case who overstayed her welcome," I corrected him, my smile never reaching my eyes. "The one who wasn't worth the investment." "Sloane, look," he started, his voice jumping an octave. "That was a lifetime ago. We were kids. It was just business. My father. He put pressure on me. I didn't have a choice." "We always have a choice, Alastair," I said, standing up. I walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the city he was about to lose. "You chose to ruin a life to save a grade. And I chose to spend 10 years making sure that when you finally fell, I'd be the one holding the floor." "Please," he choked out, his arrogance finally snapping. "If I don't get this loan by Friday, I'm going to prison. My father, he'll die of shame. Just tell me what you want. Anything. I'll sign anything." I turned around, a predatory heat rising in my chest. This was the moment. "I don't want your 5%, Alastair. I want your dignity. I've prepared a behavioral audit. 3 tasks. 3 days. You complete them and I'll consider signing the check." "What kind of tasks?" I sat back down and folded my hands. "The kind that remind you what it's like to be at the bottom of the food chain. If you want my money, Alastair, you're going to have to earn it the way I did. From the mud up." Alastair stared at me, his mouth hanging open like a landed fish. He was looking for a punchline, a gotcha moment where I'd laugh and tell him it was all a joke. But I didn't laugh. I just leaned back and let the silence of the room press in on him. "You're serious," he whispered. "You want me to perform for you? I want to see if there's anything left in you worth saving." "Alastair," I replied, sliding a single sheet of paper across the desk. "Task 1 begins tonight, midnight, at the Finch Aerospace, assembly plant in New Jersey." He snatched up the paper. "What is this? A site inspection?" "No," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "It's a sanitation shift. You'll be reporting to the night foreman. You'll be wearing a yellow jumpsuit. And you'll be scrubbing the chemical filtration vats in Sector 4, by hand." Alastair's face contorted. "You've got to be kidding me. Those vats they're toxic. That's why we have specialized crews. I'm the CEO, Sloane. I don't scrub floors." "You aren't a CEO anymore, Alastair. You're a man who needs $800 million. And Sector 4, that's where my father worked. That's where he spent 12 hours a day breathing in fumes because your family was too cheap to install the ventilation system the engineers begged for. He died with lungs full of Finch industrial waste. I think it's only fair you see what that feels like. He looked like he wanted to spit on my desk. For a second, that old Finch fire flickered in his eyes. The one that told him the world owed him everything. But then his phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer, no doubt. The walls were closing in. Fine, he spat, the words sounding like broken glass. I'll do your damn shift. Midnight. The factory was a cathedral of cold steel and the hum of heavy machinery. I stood on the elevated observation deck, hidden in the shadows, watching the man below. Alastair looked ridiculous. The yellow jumpsuit was 2 sizes too big, and his manicured hands were shoved into thick rubber gloves. He was on his knees, scrubbing the bottom of a massive industrial tank. The heat in the room was unbearable, and the air smelled like sulfur and old grease. He lasted 2 hours before he tried to bribe the foreman. I watched through the security feed as he pulled out a gold watch, Rolex worth more than the foreman's house, and tried to trade it for a break. I keyed the intercom, my voice booming through the empty vat. The watch is a counterfeit, Alastair. Just like your balance sheets. Get back to work. If you stop for more than 5 minutes, the deal is dead. He jumped, looking up at the cameras with pure, unadulterated hatred. He didn't say a word, but he went back to the floor. For the next 10 hours, I watched the heir to a billion-dollar empire break. His back arched in pain. His hands shook. He vomited twice from the fumes. By 10 a.m., when the morning shift arrived, he was slumped against the wall, covered in gray sludge and sweat, his royal blood finally mixing with the dirt of the common man. I walked down the stairs, my heels clicking rhythmically on the metal grating. I looked like a queen visiting the dungeons. I stopped a foot away from him, pulling a silk handkerchief from my pocket and holding it to my nose. How was it, Alastair? Did the club feel a little different from the inside of a vat? He looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot. I did it, he croaked. The vats are clean. Now give me the money. I looked at my watch. That was just the warm-up. You've proven you can move your arms. Now we're going to see if you can open your mouth. Task 2 starts in 4 hours at St. Jude's Academy. I hope you still have that speech-writing talent you used on me 10 years ago. I turned and walked away, leaving him in the dirt. I wasn't just hurting him. I was dismantling him. And the best part? He was the one handing me the tools. The drive to St. Jude's Academy took 2 hours. Alastair sat in the back of my car, shivering despite the heat, trying to scrub the industrial grease from under his fingernails with a cocktail napkin. He looked broken, but I knew he was still clinging to the idea that this was just a game. He thought he could buy his soul back with a little manual labor. He was wrong. When we pulled up to the ivy-covered gates, a crowd was already gathering. I had leaked a major announcement to the press. Cameras from every financial news outlet were lined up, their lenses pointed at the podium. I had commissioned in front of the Alastair Finch aerospace wing. What is this, Sloane? Alastair hissed, his voice cracking. I thought this was a private audit. Transparency is a key pillar of my firm, Alastair, I said, checking my reflection in the car window. I looked perfect. He looked like a man who had crawled out of a sewer. The board needs to see that you're willing to be honest. Here's your script. I handed him a single index card. He read it, and his face went from gray to a sickly mottled purple. I can't say this. This is suicide. My father will disown me. The shareholders will rip me apart. Then walk away, I said, opening the car door. The police are probably at your office by now anyway. You have 30 seconds to decide, prison or the truth. The sun was bright, glinting off the glass of the library where I used to solve equations for a life. I thought I'd lost. I stood in the front row, arms crossed, as Alastair stumbled up to the mic. The feedback squealed, a sharp, piercing sound that made the crowd wince. I stand before you today, Alastair began, his voice trembling so hard the microphone rattled. He looked at me. I didn't blink. For 10 years, the Finch name has stood for innovation. But today I must admit that the foundation of our success was built on theft. The crowd gasped. 100 camera shutters clicked simultaneously. In this very school 10 years ago, I stole the future of a student more brilliant than I could ever hope to be. I framed an innocent woman, Sloane Sterling, for my own crimes to protect my inheritance. And I have spent the last decade doing the same to our investors, our employees, and our country. He looked like he was going to faint. He was admitting to the frame job, the embezzlement, and the fraud, all on a live stream to every major bank in the world. He was erasing the Finch legacy in real time. "I am not a leader," he choked out, the script falling from his shaking hands. I am a liability." He collapsed back into his seat, burying his face in his hands. The press surged forward, shouting questions, but my security team formed a wall of black suits. I walked up to the podium, adjusted the mic, and looked directly into the lead camera. "The Sterling Group values honesty," I said calmly. "Mr. Finch has finally provided some. We will take his confession into account during our final credit review." I turned to Alastair, who was sobbing quietly. I leaned down, my lips inches from his ear. "That was almost moving, Alastair. But you missed a spot." "What?" he sobbed. "I gave you everything. I destroyed my name. Give me the check." "There's one more thing you haven't given me," I whispered. "The one thing you love more than your name. Your home. Task 3 is at the Finch estate. Bring the deed, Alastair, or don't bother showing up." I walked away as the crowd swallowed him whole. One task left. The debt was almost settled. The Finch estate was a monument to stolen time. It sat on a cliffside overlooking the Atlantic, a sprawling fortress of white, marble and glass that had been in Alastair's family for 4 generations. It was the only place on earth where Alastair felt like a god. I was waiting for him in the Grand Library. The air smelled of old paper and arrogance. On the mahogany desk sat a single fountain pen and a legal document that would transfer the deed of this entire property to me for the sum of $1. Alastair entered like a ghost. He wasn't even angry anymore. He was hollow. He walked across the Persian rugs, his footsteps silent, and dropped a heavy brass key onto the desk. "The house," he whispered. "The confession. The manual labor. It's all gone, Sloane. I have nothing left. No name, no pride, no home. Just sign the loan. Save the company so I can at least stay out of a cell." I picked up the deed. I looked at the signature line where Alastair Finch had been replaced by Sloane Sterling. It felt heavy in my hands, not because of the value of the land, but because of the weight of the justice it represented. "Sign it," he pleaded, reaching for the $800 million loan agreement that sat at the edge of the desk. "The clock is at 0, Sloane. Sign it now or it's over." I picked up the pen. I hovered the nib over the signature line. Alastair's eyes tracked the movement like a starving dog watching a piece of meat. He was leaning so far forward he was almost touching me. Then I stopped. I looked him in the eye. The same eyes that had looked down at me in the rain 10 years ago. "You know, Alastair," I said, my voice steady and terrifyingly quiet, "I spent all day yesterday reviewing your performance. I looked at the way you scrubbed those vats. You tried to bribe the foreman. I looked at your confession. You only gave it because I held a gun to your career. And I looked at this house." I slowly capped the pen. "What are you doing?" He screamed, his voice cracking into a high-pitched wail. "Sign the paper." "I did a final risk assessment," I said. I picked up the $800 million contract. And then, with a slow, deliberate motion, I ripped it down the middle. Alastair let out a sound that wasn't human. He lunged across the desk, but my security team was faster. They pinned him to the mahogany as I tore the contract again, and again, until it was just white confetti on the floor. "You lied to me!" he shrieked. "You said if I did the tasks, you'd consider it." "I did consider it," I said, standing up and smoothing out my skirt. "But as a billionaire, I have a responsibility to my shareholders. And after seeing you crawl, after seeing you beg, and after seeing you sell out your own father to save your skin, I realized something." I leaned over the desk, mirroring the exact pose he had used on me in the St. Jude's courtyard. "You're a coward, Alastair. You're a thief, and you're a fraud. And most importantly," I smiled, and for the first time in 10 years, the coldness in my chest finally began to thaw. "You just aren't a good investment." The doors to the library burst open. Not my people, federal agents. I had sent them the recording of his confession from the university an hour ago. As they dragged him out of his own house, his screams echoing off the marble walls, I walked over to the window. I watched the sun setting over the ocean. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. Transaction complete. Finch Aerospace Assets acquired by Sterling Group. I didn't just take his house. I took his life's work. I took his father's legacy, and I was going to turn it into something he never could. A company built on merit, not bloodlines. I walked out of the estate, leaving the brass key on the floor. I didn't need it. I owned the whole mountain now,